If you're trying to buy a car under reasonable conditions, you would stick to the 24/10 or maybe even the 25/10 rule is even okay. The 20 means that you're making a 20% down payment on the car. That's the first step, and having 20% on hand ensures that you are in a financially responsible position to actually take on this purchase. The 4 refers to the maximum term you should set. So 4 years is part of the original rule, but these days I think you can even stretch that to 5 years. The reason that the 4 is actually part of the original rule is that it's really just looking out for you in terms of the total amount of interest that you're going to pay. You can see here that on the left, if you are financing a car for 4 years that costs $30,000, your total interest paid will be $25.29. However, if you finance it for 6 years, the total interest you have to pay now is $38.29, and that's over $1,300 you're just throwing away to interest. And the last part of the 24/10 rule is arguably the most important that we've covered a little bit today, which is that you should aim to keep your monthly car payment, including insurance and maintenance, under 10% of your gross monthly income. Note that this rule does not include fuel costs, although you should always try to factor that in a little bit as well. Here's a table of incomes between $40K and $150,000 per year and how much of a car payment you can actually afford. An easy rule of thumb is to simply take your annual gross salary and divide it by 120, and you'll get the maximum monthly car payment that you can afford. You can also just feel free to take a screenshot of this, but just know that just because you can afford a certain car payment, you shouldn't be maxing it out just because you can. You want to be prudent with your decisions, and this 10% rule helps you not overspend on a car. I know that not everybody is going to be realistically able to hit this. However, it's a general guideline that I think would help a lot of people just avoid being car poor altogether. According to Dave Ramsey, the best car is the one that you can pay off in full, or you can pay off relatively quickly. And I think if more people did that, they would not get into these troublesome situations. So just keep that in mind when you are looking for a new car. Another reason why Americans are car poor is that the fact is that in America, you have to drive everywhere. Not many cities have a lot of great public transportation. So in America, the norm is to drive from point A to point B. In most states, you're going to have to drive no matter what you do. And so having a car is somewhat mandatory to the way of life here. If you live here in the United States, you just have to understand that the infrastructure of public transportation is not quite there as some of the other countries in the world, especially because everything in America is so spread apart and far away geographically and physically. So that's definitely one of the cons of living in the States unless you live in a city with great public transportation like New York and you can walk everywhere. Now, given all of these factors, what should you do in order to avoid being car poor? Number one, I think the first thing you should do is to always follow affordability rules religiously. If you really want to be serious about being financially successful, you need to make sure your car is not a large portion of your income. The second thing is to buy a used car and let someone else take the depreciation hit. Famously, most cars will lose between 10 to 20% of their value the moment you drive it off the lot. So if you buy a 3-year-old used vehicle instead, you actually let the original owner basically absorb the massive depreciation. You're going to get significantly more car for less money as long as you're willing to drive perhaps a lightly used car 3 years old. The third thing you should do is to separate your identity from your car. The car is simply a tool to get from point A to point B. It's not a reflection of who you are. I think that the wealthiest people understand this, and the more that you can put your ego aside, the better financially you will be. Number 4, you should really calculate the total cost of ownership because you really want to be mindful of factoring in all of the costs, including maintenance, fuel, depreciation, insurance, finance charges, etc. Even a $500 monthly payment could become $750 or $800 after you add everything up. And Edmunds.com has a really great tool called the Total Cost of Ownership Calculator. I will link it down below in case you want to check that out for your specific model. It will tell you what your monthly payment will roughly be. Remember that the goal isn't to never enjoy nice things. It's just to make sure those nice things aren't preventing you from building real, actual wealth. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my video right here on how the car market is bankrupting Americans. It's one of my commentary videos and it has one of the most views on my channel. I'll see you guys in that video or a future video on the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear anything you have to say. All right, peace.